Hello everyone, welcome to the Lalit Dhanush show, and today I have with me a very special guest, and this woman, I call her the superwoman. She's a powerhouse every time she steps on the stage, and I can assure you that this episode is going to have a lot of takeaways. Now this person is a TEDx speaker not just once but twice, and she's been featured in many books, and I can only tell you that her journey, her career is super inspiring. Now before we get into that, I want to remind everybody watching to subscribe to our channel and hit the comment section if you really like this episode. And for more such episodes, stay tuned. Hello ma'am.
Hi.
Welcome to our show. How does it feel to be on our show?
Lalit, for me, it's always good to be anywhere, so long as I'm breathing and I'm alive. I think during these times, I'm happy for both, and I'm happy that I got to meet a few of you as well.
Yes.
So to me, I think just my breath, meeting people, and just the fact that I'm alive and you're able to do everything which probably the world takes for granted is reason enough to be happy.
I think that's such a nice answer. We'll dig down into that answer a little towards the end of the podcast. But however, ma'am, I have one big question to ask. You're a doctor by profession, but you're multiple things by passion, right? You bake, you speak, you change lives, you do 100 other things. Now, can you tell us about how you manage between such a hectic profession and all of these passions?
Well, I think it's not about something being a profession. Maybe by default, it does give me a source of income. But at the end of the day, I had, I think, the bent of mind right from my childhood to be with people. I thought I was a voice for many who didn't have a voice. I also believe that when there was nothing, which was fair play in many instances, I felt the need to raise my voice for somebody who was being victimized because of somebody being unfair. So I always had this tendency to take up not only a cause for myself, but for somebody else. I thought I was a stronger voice than some of the weaker voices. So I just kind of started being with people. From then on, I think, which was maybe my teenage up to now, I've chosen any opportunity that gives me a chance to be with people.
Correct.
And to work with them, to work for them, and at the end of the day, be heard through them. I believe that I've enabled thousands of minds, starting from maybe a 5-year-old to a 90-year-old.
Correct.
I've also enabled many lives, and I have maybe tons of things money can't buy.
True.
So I guess I've chosen those kind of vocations.
Correct.
Where I'm dealing with people, I'm dealing with something becoming better. I'm also dealing with the fact that you learn to accept things as they come, because not everything I've chosen has not worked out. But at the end of the day, does it make me happy? Yes. Does it give me a source to live? Simply?
Yes.
Yes. And does it enable many more to do what I do even more powerfully? 100% yes.
Awesome.
So, I mean, all of this together would be just areas where I've chosen areas which is just an expansion of me.
And I think what you said rightly was the change that you wanted to create amongst people. And for the viewers who are watching, just to build a little more context, now Ushi ma'am's been on a few books. People have written about her. She's given 2 wonderful TEDx speeches, which we will also attach the link below. And along with all of this, she's given thousands and thousands of lectures where she's impacted people, be it 10 or be it 10,000. She's done it all. So ma'am, now let me ask you, you said you want to impact people by being the voice for the voiceless. Where did this thought come from? How did it all start?
It's very difficult to put it as one reason why it all started. I've observed right from my childhood that if there were 10 children in a household, I think all of them are treated differently.
Very true.
In my own house, I've been lucky because I have just one younger brother, and he's a sibling who looks up to me, and we've all gotten along beautifully with each other, and we know how to talk and sort out differences, right? But when it came to other households, when it came to the peer groups that I mingle with, I have seen that many people are taken for granted, many people are trampled upon, many people are just let to be who they are, many people are ignored just because they didn't have the capacity to express themselves.
Correct.
So I have seen a lot of children itself do things they don't like, accept stuff they don't want, and at the end of the day, be with people whom they dislike. So when you're not able to express yourself, they used to express it to me. And I thought, why me? Because I'm very comfortable. And then I realized that maybe they're looking at, someone who can voice on their behalf.
Lovely.
Because obviously the damage will be to me.
Correct.
If nothing worked. And if it was a benefit, it would be completely to the other person.
To the other person.
So I ended up becoming a channel. And I think I realized the power of being a channel.
Correct.
I think you empower people and through that you empower yourself.
Very true.
Yes.
And also speaking about your very first profession, which is a doctor.
Yeah.
When did you realize, even your profession itself is a very noble one.
Yes.
When did this realization happen to you that, hey, I want to pick up medicine and I want to become a pediatrician?
Well, I never really thought of becoming a doctor, but again, I said, right from childhood, I've been superiorly intelligent. So I've kind of maxed all what I'm supposed to do by default.
Okay.
I was also extremely notorious as a child.
Okay.
And very talkative. So I was invariably, in this country especially, if you talk, the first thing is she talks too much.
Too much.
And I never understood what was the limit. So I went on exploring that and understood that, okay, she's intelligent. So they used to forgive me. And they used to say she's naughty, so throw her out of the class. But she's intelligent, so hug her. So I never understood that kind of a equation. And as I went on growing up, I think in the country where I belong, there were 2-3 choices which were given to me as to what do you want to become. And I think there were a lot of people who came and asked me, do you want to be an engineer? And I think till today, I have some kind of a disease like dyscalculia or something where I see numbers and I collapse. So I ran away from math. Okay. And then the other choice obviously during that time was become a doctor. Because you're intelligent and things like that. So I went with the flow, to be very honest. I never had intentions of serving people and all that, to be very honest. I wanted to show off with my title. And because I've seen a lot of people get respect because of it. And I'm being very honest. And once I started doing the program, once I started going through the educational grinds, different kinds, different degrees, different levels like graduation, post-graduation, blah, 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 doctorate, everything. At the end of the day, I realized that the more knowledge you acquire, the more the chance that you might be able to influence.
Correct.
And education means a lot.
Knowledge is indeed power.
Knowledge is power. And ignorance is bliss. I made a choice to be knowledgeable and blissful. So there are times when I'm really happy with my knowledge, and there are times when I really unlearn and make myself a little empty. So it happened by default, not with intention.
Superb.
Yeah, and once I was there, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I met lots of people. I could see that people were so grateful to you. One of the best attributes that I believe in is gratitude. I could see plenty of it in those whom you helped out. I never had a commercial bent of mind. So I always knew that, if you're going into a business that is medicine, you make lots of money. But if you're going into something called service, maybe you don't make that amount of money, but there are some things money can't buy.
Very true.
You end up getting that. I wanted to tread a middle path where I earned a living, but most importantly, I was there to serve others. Correct. So I guess there comes the story of serve others.
Correct.
To a point of sometimes being too foolish.
It happens. And I think because of those mistakes that we make, we become much better. And I think one of the things that we were talking on call was that you said you also transitioned into becoming a teacher very soon in your life as you gained some trajectory in your profession. Now tell us about how this part of giving came into your life and what did teaching do to you?
Lalit, I was always a great speaker. Again, by default, not by training, right? I guess I told you I was a talkative child. So the number of hours on field, right? It makes you who you are.
Correct.
The love for languages helps you acquire a lot of vocabulary. And at the end of the day, you end up speaking. When I started doing what I was doing, and I've observed in my peer groups that anytime there was a story which happened either in hostel, in life, in college, they would say, wait, Ushil, come and tell us. And I used to wonder why me. First, I thought I was a good actress, but I wasn't. They just enjoyed my expression. They just felt that I added a lot of emotion, a lot of feeling, a lot of truth to the story. and they found the narrative to be very exciting. When we sit in classrooms, we have met teachers who are very boring, very uninteresting, and sometimes, you know, they bring out the murderer instinct in you, right? So at some point, we wish they were dead or I died, you know. So I've met those kind of people as well. And that day I decided, my goodness, what a potent area of communication, of conveying, of convincing, but most importantly, connecting with people, which people are underestimating. And I think that's when one of the teachers who I saw, who dared to be himself, impacted me. I also met another teacher who dared and allowed me to be who I am.
Wow.
And he learned from me. And I thought, hey, you're the one supposed to be teaching me. How come you're learning from me? And he always told me that, you know, whenever I take an idea from you, I become famous in my circles. So which means that he was riding on my wings. And there were some people who I realized were very great, so I sat on their shoulders. So what happened is, like, I also grew along with them. And, you know, I've read somewhere that, you know, if you really want to grow big in life, sit on the shoulders of giants. And I think that's also something which I learned. So when I started seeing all these people who either managed or mismanaged, I decided that you're intelligent, you can speak, put the two together, and at some point you want to make a difference. So what a better way than a teacher? Because your whole future you touch when you become a teacher.
Very true.
And I believe that you can make a difference. I loved the fact that I was researching. I also loved the fact that I was sharing. I also loved the fact that I was learning. I think all dynamics worked with me. So if I finished on, say, September 30th, you know, maybe October 1st, you know, I was a teacher. There was not even a day when I, in fact, lost becoming, you know, from the time I was a student. It was a direct teacher on day one. And that also, on the first day that I went into college, everyone knew that I speak well. But that's not the only reason why one should become a teacher. You should mean well as well. And most importantly, accept people for who they are. So they sent me to 3 classrooms. And I still remember chalk pieces coming on my head, dusters being thrown at me, you know, and there was a shoe also which was thrown at me. And currently that gentleman who threw a shoe at me is the dean of a medical school. So I guess, like, I managed to make him from that shoe thrower to who he is today, who's sitting on the chair of a very esteemed college somewhere in India. So, you know, the transformations that come to you as a teacher, I think they're commendable.
Yes. And I also believe that a lot of times teachers play a very important role, and I also feel it's like an unsung hero role that they play in your life. So I want to ask you, did you have any teachers who became your mentors? And if yes, who were they and what kind of impact did they create in your life?
I did not have any mentor, honestly. So it was not like one single person who really groomed me or allowed me to be who I am. I had most of my teachers who passively watched me because they loved to see me blossom. They always corrected me when they thought that, hey, you know what, you could have done things better, but again in a very passive manner. And they allowed me to make my mistakes. And I think sometimes we are so hell-bent on perfection that we don't allow people to fail.
Yes.
And I think this is a huge fear in today's population, that I don't want to fail. I want everything quickly. I want to climb and reach the highest peak within no time. Fear of missing out is such a big problem in today's complete generation, students, everybody, even teachers, that you always wanted to be better than the other. Whereas I've never seen competition all my life. And I thought the teachers knew that very well about me. So I'm really blessed, and I'm very grateful that I really didn't need to go through having an individual as a mentor. But like everyone says, it's all about many masters, one life. So I've seen and learned. I'm an observational learner. I've also seen and unlearned that I would never do this in my life to somebody. I've been on the receiving end of a lot of maybe not great behavior. I've also been on the receiving end of people who protected me as a teacher. So there were a lot of virtues which I learned from my teachers. And I think I owe it all to my alumnus. I think 30 years after my program, I was called back by one of the teachers who was my teacher. And he told me, can you please come and teach our teachers what you teach the world, because I knew you were always different, and I still believe you are different. So the day my teacher sat on the other side and he sat to learn from me, I think it took me about 30 years to be an overnight success. That day I believed that, holding on to your beliefs, holding on to your values, holding on to your principles, being you for the 100 reasons that you believe you should be is the most important thing in life. Be the individual that you are and not what somebody asks you to be.
Very true, ma'am. And I think the way you put it across was great because, it's like a whole circle. It's like what goes around comes back around.
Yeah.
And you start reflecting on all the things you've done for the
Yep.
last 30 years. Ma'am, and you mentioned a very specific point which I really like. You said today's generation, a lot of kids feel entitled towards success.
Yes.
They all want it overnight and all of this. And me also being a teacher in the last 3 to 4 years, in the little journey that I've had, I've understood that it has been increasing every year, not just every generation, but every single year. And I also feel this entitlement feeling comes from this education system that we are in, because everybody wants 100, everybody if not wants a 99.9, nobody cares about what the kid is like mentally, what he's going to do post degree. What do you think about the education system, and do you believe that the education system is causing a lot of harm in these children?
We've been carrying along with an education system which is ancient. It's been like the same system in different containers. At the end of the day, it's nothing but rote learning.
Correct.
It's all about reading, by hearting, learning, reproducing it blindly, not applying it really appropriately, and at the end of the day, coming with that much of knowledge of which you don't use any bit. At the end of the day, you're just creating 1,000 replicas of what exists. Instead of nurturing uniqueness, instead of nurturing extracurricular, co-curricular, everything has become curriculum.
Correct.
So if everything is curriculum and you want 100 people to get 99% and you want 100 people to get 100%, anybody who gets even 0.1% less feels deficient, and that is so wrong, because being the best, you still feel like the worst.
Very true.
And I think we are training those children to become like that. We are training the future to become like that. I have thousands of parents, thousands of children who call me up, and the parents are so worried because either the child is not coping well, or the child is really depressed because everyone is ridiculing him for having gotten 99%, where 80 of them got 100%. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I have personally suggested to a lot of parents to pull out their children from the mainstream education system, do
Wow.
homeschooling,
Wow.
get onto online schooling, and guess what? Those children have blossomed.
Can I ask you why
Yes.
quickly?
Why? Because they've been allowed to be who they are.
Awesome.
They've also been asked to explore what they like. And at the end of the day, it's a beautiful mix of what is curriculum, what is co-curriculum, and what is extracurriculum.
I think it also brings about a lot of self-awareness in that child, understanding these are the things that I can excel at, build a career on, or maybe even build my passion on, and these are the things I can avoid
Yeah.
if need be. Ma'am, so if I'm an 18-year-old right now, what do you think is the best way I can build a good amount of self-awareness to be really successful in what I want to do?
Take 6 months off. Yeah.
Wow.
As impractical as it sounds sometimes for some people, let me tell you, the time that you give yourself, you would never have lost. I believe that if you spend 3 to 6 months just exploring what makes you happy, what makes you not so happy, what are the skills that you'd like to acquire, what is it that you acquired without any use, I believe at some point it's a lot of self-exploration.
True.
It's a lot of self-discovery. And if you understand self-discovery and self-exploration, definitely a lot of layers of who the child is will be shown to the young adult or the child. And you would be able to take what we call informed choices.
Okay.
And not something what another person recommends that you do.
Correct.
You see, if you ask a young child today, Lalit, what do you want to become when you grow up? He will say, I want to be an astronaut. Little knowing what the astronaut does. I met a young girl the other day and I asked her, what do you want to become when you grow up? She said, I want to be an obstetrician, and she could barely say the word. And I asked her, what does an obstetrician do? And she had no idea. It just sounded good. And it was something constantly being fed to her. And that is really not the way to go forward. I have friends of mine who tell me, hey, you know what? My son, he's forever playing with a screwdriver. he's opening out the TV, he's, bolting, unbolting, and, screwing in the nuts and taking it all off and putting it together. You nodidre engineer ಆಗ್ತಾನೆ, which means that I think he's built to become an engineer. How dumb can you get?
Yeah.
I mean, these are the so-called milestones which people are looking at to decide for a child what the child should do. And I think at the age of 16 and 18, a child is very capable today of deciding for themselves what they feel comfortable doing, because there's no point doing something all your life and finally 30 years later trying to figure out why the hell did I do that. They say when the scientists were busy trying to find a way to climb a mountain, the mystics were already sitting there. So sometimes what happens when you're aware, the spiritual side of you opens up, your analytical side is already overnourished, but the creative side of you starts blossoming. Our education supports mostly logical learning.
Correct.
Our education system supports analytical learning. So what happens is you are a one-sided giant. You're a left-brain giant, and your right brain goes to sleep because you're not using it. We need people who are balanced on both sides of function.
Ma'am, one question to this is, I 100% agree with what you said, but I want to ask you a question that I got recently from a college that I did a session in. A girl stood up and said, "Sir, I agree with all the things that you said. Self-awareness is important, building skills is important, learning from various mentors is important, but what do I do if my parents stop me from doing all of these things?" Ma'am, what would you suggest to that girl if she was right here?
Well, communication is not a very emphasized skill today. I was able to convince my parents. I was able to convince my friends. I was able to convince my teachers. I was able to convince almost everybody in my life about the way that I chose and the way that I think is important to them. I wield the power of influence through words. I believe at some point, if you really believe in what you're doing and you're ready to go ahead and do it and learn it by doing, be it good or bad, without judging it, I think you should have the power to convince your parents.
Correct.
If I work against something my parents have told me, it does not mean that I don't love them. It does not mean that I don't respect them. It just means that I respect myself too. It just means that I strongly believe in something that I so badly want that I'm ready to explain it to you and ensure that you understand the want as well as I do.
Correct.
And for that, you need the power of communication. You need to bridge that gap. If someone is not able to understand what you want, it's only because they have gaps. And those gaps come in because you're not able to share it appropriately. So I think that the number one skill which every student must have, must be taught, is communication. You know 1,000 things, like for example, you have done your PhD. You know the way to go to Mars, you know the way to go to the moon, but you don't know how to meet your neighbor. And that is ridiculous, because you can find a million ways, to do your research and to come out and probably be out there as a Nobel laureate. But of what use is all this when I cannot communicate with my parents, when I can't communicate with my neighbors, when I can't be, a friend to people who I am studying or working with? So I think we often underestimate the simple things in life. And I think one of the strongest skills that the future requires is the power not only to speak, but the power to remain silent when necessary.
Correct. And that's why most often if you talk to the most accomplished people, they say listening is something that you get because of that. Because if you don't listen and if you're a great speaker, it doesn't change things, right? And I also know one of my dear friends, also a Toastmaster, always uses this quote from somewhere. He says, "You have 2 ears and 1 tongue." That means you simply got to listen to more than you speak more. Ma'am, so speaking about skills and moving up, I also feel that you are an excellent communicator, and you've been that from day one. You've channelized yourself and all that you want to do in the right way. I believe that not everybody is capable of doing this, because it's not just about learning a skill, it's about many more other things. And the first thing that I feel is spirituality, and with whatever definition that you'd want to give it. What do you think is spirituality, and how have you imbibed it in your life?
To me, spirit is just very simple. It's being who you are, the way you think you should be, and living with a feeling and accepting every feeling that comes to you as being the feeling that you feel, which means if I like somebody, it's all right. But if I dislike somebody, I'm not going to show that I like them. It's called alignment. When you're aligned with your thought, your emotion, and your action, I think there goes spiritual. Wow. Which means that you are who you believe, think, and feel you are, and a lot beyond that. Which means that the capacity to be open-minded, the capacity to understand people for who they are and not who you think they are. This overt desire to change others. I have seen people saying, I need to change them, I need to change them, I need to change them. And when I ask them, can you change your shirt? They say no. So, you are that resistant to change and you believe you can be a change agent for the whole world. That's not being fair. Another thing I've observed is that people always look for people who think like them. I think I've always made friends with people who don't think like me. And that's one of the secrets of my success. Which means that every time I go and embrace somebody who doesn't think like me, I learn from them.
Correct.
There might be areas where I'm not really strong. So when I see somebody who's better than me in a certain area, but may not agree with me, or maybe somebody I wouldn't normally get along with, I still think it's being very smart and spiritual to accept differences respectfully and to look for similarities, which is very human, but go one step above and embrace dissimilarities. I think that is being spiritual. Yes. The ability to accept people for who they are, don't try to change them. The ability to be who you are without any 1 ounce of shame. And at the end of the day, be responsible and accountable for the person that you are. Okay. You cannot say I'm perfect. So I think I've always been imperfect and I have no issues with that. I tell people that I come with a statutory warning. And I believe that when you're listening to me, it's the truth. Correct. It may sound very strong, it may be bitter, but it is the truth. It's not something polished, it's not something refined, it's not something diplomatic, and there's no two other ways about it. So for every 10 people that love you, maybe a half a person may not like you, I think, because it's negative admiration. Very true. So I think if I'm speaking to you, Lalit, I'm speaking to me. Mm-hmm. So I treat life with respect. I treat another person with a lot of respect, no matter what the age. And we have a tendency to think that maybe a child is a miniature adult. Mm-hmm. And that's not right. A child can actually trip you. Mm-hmm. I mean, he can be a giant when it comes to intellectual positioning. Very true. And the toughest of questions I get are from children. I mean, the toughest of experiences that I've learned from are always kids who have been my patients. And they're eye-openers. So never underestimate a physically small human being. Yeah. I mean, they can get in your way, and that's why I always believe that everyone can be a contributor. Oh, I don't have the skills, I cannot. I think those are excuses. So whether you are mastering efforts or you are a slave to excuses, the choice is yours. I believe spiritual people are always mastering efforts.
Ma'am, and one of the things that you said about children and yourself, I think I find very common, is that children don't think twice to ask or say something. Yeah. And I've seen that in you being bold. And I think that's the side that we say, keep the child in you alive, right? Yeah. It's the ability to do things without being judged or without seeking validation. Yeah. But in today's society, I've also observed that a lot of people, the moment they start speaking the truth, also receive equal amount of hate, and because they receive that hate, they start manipulating their own thoughts and their own words. I want to know, how have you overcome such challenges in your own life? For example, you've said something really bold, or you've done something really bold, and people would have, I'm sure they would have been against it, but can you give us an instance or a trip back memory lane where you would have experienced this in your young career?
The latest and the last time that I tripped somebody was yesterday. So it's nothing to do with late stage of my career or maybe the early stage of my career. Mm-hmm. I was always known and I am known to speak the truth. So even my enemy would accept that I may not like her, but what she says cannot be denied. So I think that's something where you have earned people's respect. People also hold you extremely accountable for what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And like I said before, I think if somebody doesn't like what you're saying, It's only because they want to say same things, but they don't have the courage or the gumption to say it. So what happens, negative admiration sets in. And then you start, throwing stones at people and saying things. And there was this gentleman, with his outsized ego who just came up to me and said that being a woman, how can you be so loud and bold? And I just smiled and I told him that, it's something which a man can be too. And I have observed and I explained to the gentleman that when a man speaks loud and strong, you call him, wow, here comes a leader, so powerful, right? And when a woman speaks loud and strong, you say, oh shit, here comes trouble. And, I mean, that's the, the bigotedness and, the kind of duality in which human beings live. One rule for you, one rule for me. So it's always been like that. Teachers have asked me, how dare you ask a teacher a question? And actually I brought a book and I showed it to a teacher and I said, this is what I read in this book. And the teacher said, you're reading from this book, get out. Instead of commending me for the fact that I brought in defense to what I said, I think I was thrown out of the classroom. So it's been a journey. And I think every time people do this to me, I get stronger. And I think in today's world, people are too thin-skinned. You need to be thick-skinned. When I say thin-skinned, it means that you get buttered too quickly. You need to be thick-skinned. And that means that, see, Lalit, if you put a small-minded person in a big position, the people under him will suffer. So as a leadership coach, let me share with you the number one trait that I train my leaders for is expand your mind. Be accepting of people for who they are. Don't show them who they should be. Be like me, be like me. What makes you think you're so perfect? So I think at some point, if you keep a small man in a big position, you cannot expect that person to function beyond a level. So even before you're taking on anything, right, you've got to expand mind. So I've been a mind practitioner. I'm into neuropsychology. I work with the brain a lot. I think everything in my life is between my ears. And so is it in yours. Yeah. But a lot of people take that journey of maybe 12 inches to move from the heart to the brain to realize that your life lies between your ears. Correct. And we are so unique. People don't understand a lot of things about them being unique. People don't understand that you are underestimating yourself. And today's students' esteem sometimes is completely reduced by teachers. It's completely reduced by parents who constantly compare, by teachers who constantly compare. If you observe in most of our teaching systems, we are so happy and 90% of the attention goes to the top guys in the class.
Correct. Very true.
The mid-benchers and the back-benchers are most often ignored and they're being written off as being useless. I focus on the backbencher because that is that guy who's going to make the change. That is that girl who's going to do the fantastic jobs ahead. That is that one kid under whom all these front benchers will work. And I think that's the way to look at it.
I could not deny that in any way, because that's been the story of my life. I was also studying biology back when I was 18, and my parents gave up on me. They said, do whatever you want from now. And that was possibly the best thing that happened. I think most backbenchers get the freedom of really embracing themselves because they have no expectation set in.
Yes. And nobody's, kind of putting you under the watch.
Correct.
So when you want something to grow, you cannot focus on it so hard that it shrinks. Energy can be of two kinds, one that grows you and one that shrinks you. So the kind of manure that you're feeding that energy will determine whether the child is growing or whether the child is shrinking. Now, if you look at a weed and a seed, the job of a teacher is to be fertilizer. The weed grows and the seed grows. You cannot be biased and say, I'll fertilize only the seeds.
That's a farmer's job, and I think, like you said, you shouldn't be that. You shouldn't think that way. Ma'am, and speaking of that, one of the biggest no's that I've gotten in my life, because I was a backbencher and I was a failure, was my grandparents and my parents. I mean, maybe they didn't know, but they were asking me to let go of my extracurricular activities, but I had no other choice but to embrace it because that was the only thing I was good at it. And eventually figured out that that would be my life, and today I'm sitting in this podcast because of that. So I want to ask you, how important is extracurricular activities for a degree student, right now because he might get into a job or he might be self-employed. What do you think about extracurricular activities or the skills that you learn from it?
I would not say that your life can be only about extracurricular activities. Curriculum is really important. I would not discount the importance of education and curriculum. However, it must be balanced with co-curricular and extracurricular. I think the kind of time that you give a child to explore all that you're learning, to explore all that are possibilities, is really underestimated. The time that you're giving a child to study, take exam, study, take exam, study, go to tutorial and get into the entrance, start becoming doctor, start becoming engineer, I think it's too focused. It's like driving on a boring highway. I think extracurricular gives you those pit stops. Extracurricular gives you those refreshment areas. Extracurricular gives you team spirit. For example, if you're playing a game, sports, the importance of sports in education, often underrated. The importance of communication in students, often underrated. The importance of understanding gender right from childhood, understanding that people have different preferences, choices, of understanding that society sets the norms, but you need to be a little more expanded as a mind. All of these things fit into co and extracurricular. So a lot of focus is when curriculum is not there, you can do extracurricular. I say that with the curricular, you must practice the extracurricular. Either of both is not really, I would say, feasible. You need to have a balance of both. Thereby, the individual is given the entire arena to explore. Wonderful. Exploration and discovery becomes a part of everyone's life till you're no more in the physical body.
And I definitely do agree with you because I found my balance because I started becoming good at extracurricular activities, and then my marks also started matching it up because the confidence that I got started seeping in. One of the catalysts in my journey specifically was Toastmasters, because I started very early, very young, when I was 18, and I've still been a Toastmaster. And I'm sure for kids out there who want to learn a skill like communication skills, Toastmasters could be a fantastic platform to come network, learn from people. What would you suggest? Do you suggest Toastmasters to be a part of some of these students?
Well, there are many platforms out there. Toastmasters is something I've been with for more than 2 decades. I would say that it's a very non-hostile atmosphere. It's an atmosphere where many people don't judge you for who you are or where you come from. I think everybody sits on a clean slate over there. And at the end of the day, it teaches you one of the most important skills of the future called networking.
Correct.
I think you get to meet, for example, in a Toastmaster meeting the other day, we were training kids, and those kids were from countries like Philippines, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, India. India and Pakistan are sitting in the same room without fighting. And I think that's what Toastmasters does to you. Yeah. It does not allow geographic boundaries to divide you. It does not allow diversity to divide you. Instead, it talks about everyone coming together for one common purpose, which is connect and communicate. And I think that is what the basic desire of every human being is, to speak and to be heard, to sit quietly and still be heard, and at the end of the day, be accepted for who you are. I think these are really important traits. The Toastmasters is a brilliant platform where young people can explore, experiment, and experience, learn from people, and finally be impacted maybe with inspirational stories. I've not seen depressing stories in Toastmasters.
Ever.
It's always inspirational stories. And also learn what appeals to me and what doesn't appeal to me. So that gives you the playground to experiment. And I say to everyone, when the whole world tells somebody you can't, you'll have one friendly Toastmaster who comes to you and says, you can.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a huge pat on your back.
Correct.
And I think it's just a few centimeters away from a kick in your back.
Correct.
And I think both of these things only Toastmasters can do.
Correct.
So they become friends for life, they become faculty for life, and most importantly, I think they remain with you as a part of your system once you like the benefits of it. See, where more than 3 people are there, I think there's a lot more than politics which might happen. And that happens in many setups, right?
Every setup.
So it's all about learning to handle people, and I think it's a brilliant way to start. If you want to play maybe cricket for India, you start in your Maidan or in your gully, right? So when you want to become somebody as a professional speaker, you want to head an organization, you want to be a master communicator, you start somewhere.
Correct.
And I think these organizations enable you for a good start.
Very true. And then it becomes infinite as to where you could reach.
Yeah.
And I also feel the word network plays a very important role, especially for young people who are always on social media, because networking is about building your own net worth. It's going out there, reaching to people, understanding who knows you and who you know, because without which growing becomes quite hard. On that note, I'm so glad that Toastmasters built my network where I could talk to somebody like you. It was an amazing, I should say, a life-changing episode that we had today. And I'm so eager to see all the people who can take away some sort of seed that they can sow in their head and really impact not just their lives, but the lives of all the other people in their network. On that note, thank you so much, Ushi ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lalit. And I wish you all the best in all your endeavors.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I end with my favorite sentence that whenever somebody opens the window, one man sees the sky, the other one sees the mud. So it's all about perspectives. Where do you want to look? What do you want to do? And at the end of the day, just be grateful for everything that you have. So they say that, happiness is because we are always craving for something. It's important that, you enjoy what you have more than craving for other things that you don't have. So on this note, stay safe. And I think it's been wonderful being alive.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.